everyone, this is Emily.
This is Stephanie.
And today we're actually going to do another book review for Book of the Month Club Pick, and it is Pachinko by Ning-Jing Lee. And this was my, I believe, March pick for Book of the Month. So the book itself is a cover of a family saga of around 3 generations of Koreans who end up migrating to Japan due to the imperial influences of like the grandfather generation, the sort of upgrowth and of a business, as well as, you know, becoming a modern day child of a minority in modern day Japan. And overall, the spam of the book is very reminiscent of like stories that you would typically find more often in Asian lore, like this one idea of like having a book or even a series cover through multiple people. One of the books that really comes to me but may not be as oftenly read is like The Good Earth by Pure Buck. So I feel like the book itself is very distinctively, there is a very distinctive Asian literature influence to it. But yeah, in general, I am of the opinion that I really liked it. I definitely enjoyed the overall journey, having multiple characters and really indulging, I guess, in this rare third person omniscience point of view, which you actually don't find very often in most books. Like most books are usually written in first person or third person limited, but this book managed to really pull off the very rare like omniscience point of view very well.
Yeah, I actually really like this book. I thought it made me really more perspective of the whole like Koreans in modern day Japan, just because I never really thought of it as a big issue. And it was not, I feel like it's not a subject that's very, you know, widely talked about. So I never really thought about how nationalistic Japan is, and how like back in the day when the whole like when they were trying to like, you know, dominate Asia back in World War II, how it affected the other Asians around them. You know, like I feel like I saw Pearl Harbor a long time ago, but it was more like the Americans' perspective, and how back in the day, like they went to China. I mean, I think one of the scene in there was like they flew into China, they crashed there or something like that, and they were afraid that it was the Japanese people that would come to them, and instead it was like Chinese people which helped them or something like that. So I guess back in the day, like they were at odds with each other. Everyone's odds against Japan. Apparently that's what it was. But I really like this book because I really like, now whenever I watch like anything that's like Japanese related, I'm just like, are they nationalistic still? Like I start to get this like weird like mind, I don't know, like thinking about how they really are, and like are they really like that? Like when I went to, because I've been to Japan a few times, and didn't you live there for a short period of time or something?
Yeah, I lived there for like a month, mostly helping just to give you, since you mentioned it, like just university students, English tutoring assistants. But yeah, I definitely was there for a month. We can speak a little bit to our experience there, but I would like you to start first.
Well, my experience was always like holiday, like traveling. So I was always there just on vacation. So I never really got into the whole like, oh, are they very nationalistic? Do they, you know, do they think it's weird that I don't speak Japanese because I clearly look Asian? And a lot of, from my experience, Asian cultures, if you look Asian, they expect you to be one of them, even though you're clearly not. Like whether or not I go to Japan or Korea or China or anywhere else, if I look like one of them, they're like, they think I'm one of them. And then when I don't speak their language because I'm clearly not Japanese or Korean or anything, they're like kind of confused, and then they're like, oh, what are you? And I'm like, I'm American. And they're like, but you don't look American.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, and I'm like, what does that mean? But anyway, that's a whole different story. So I never really thought of them as like very kind of like tight with their culture, because they're always super friendly. You know, they're very, very polite. They're one of the most polite people I know. Like whenever I go to them or whatever, ask them any questions, regardless if with my broken Japanese or like with English, they're more than willing to help out. I couldn't really fathom like the difference between now versus, you know, like just 50 years ago, I would say 50, 60 years ago, and how racist they were against other Asian cultures.
For me in general, like the book itself kind of struck a lot of resonance for me because of the fact that I understood that this particular angle wasn't really like well known. I think there's a lot of division even among Japanese people because like while I wouldn't say the Japanese people have a necessary like distinctive caste system as like I guess India kind of does, they do have a distinction between those of the lowest of the low, I guess. I forget what they were called. Like, they were called like Baku-san or whatever. And there was a lot of like conflict and strife among them. And while like I also noted this when I was there. So I would understand that like society is always really complicated. And the fact that this author has really gotten you deep and let you like kind of reflect on that particular angle, I feel like she's really succeeded. I really like the fact that like they started off as pastors and then they eventually went into like business, and I was just like, whoa, this is
and
like
then Pachinko as well.
Yeah, Pachinko, which is a gambling business.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting because I have seen Pachinko machines,
right?
And like now it's
in
like
Japan too. There's so many of them.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to see like these immigrant stories and where exactly, despite this discrimination and prejudice against them, how they've managed to like figure out like a meager livelihood and make it into like a profitable business. Of course, there's like sacrifices and like conflict that needed to be resolved throughout like the different generations, but the fact that it spanned like overall like 3 or 4 generations, you really got the whole picture. You got like not a bird's eye view but a God's view, basically,
like omniscient view.
Omniscient basically. That's basically the summary of it, but it's like a God's view of like exactly what happened to this family line.
The thing I really did like about this book was the fact that it kind of encompasses like, you know, multiple generations. I think in the really beginning it was about what was the girl's name? Sunja, like it was like Sunja's dad's parents' generation. Because a very brief few like chapters on that and how like, you know, how her father came to be and like how he had like defects and whatever, blah blah blah. And then Sunja was like the daughter because they got like matchmade, like her parents was like a matchmaker's, you know, results. And so it really follows like that from that generation to Sunja and her sons, and then Sunja's sons and their sons. And that's like, so how many generations is that? That's like 5 generations of story like right here. And even though like the first 2 was like very like, you know, not really talked about, mostly focused on Sunja and then her sons and her sons, her grandchildren's like generations. But I liked how you can really see the differences in generations, like their values. You know, like back in the day, it was all about, you know, like Sunja didn't know how to read, she didn't know how to write. All she knew was really some basic arithmetics because her mother and her family at that time were running like a boarding house, so they had to know how to count money and that kind of stuff. But other than that, like you really see the generation gaps and how education became more important as time went on, and their values. Like at the time, she was more focused on like family values, like learning how to cook and like, well, not learning how to cook, she knew how to cook, but like cooking and providing for her family. Whereas, you know, her sons at that point was more about making money to survive and try to like get rich, and which is why they were like, their focus at the time was really about making money. So I was actually impressed at how well off they became. You know, like you wouldn't really think that, but they became like really well off to the point that I believe her son was hosting like celebrities at his kids' like birthday parties or whatever. And I'm like, that's a crazy amount of money right there. You know, especially since this is still like 1980s or 1970s at that point. And then like how Solomon, like her grandchild, was mostly focused on just education as well, and like being more like accepting of others. I feel like at that point the Japanese people also were more like the generation gap between, you know, their grandparents' time versus like the nowadays where they're more accepting of foreigners. I think back in the day when Sunja and her family was trying to run away from, escape from like the bombs and like whatever, like the war, a lot of Japanese people, like the older traditional Japanese people, were like, no, like we don't want them here. They were very more racist. And then whereas their kids were more like accepting. So I think that was an interesting like generation gap overall.
So a bit of that topic, I felt like it was imperative though that a lot of the grandfather age, that they funny enough, be racist because it was a wartime.
Yeah.
Because, like, you don't really start wars with people that you try to understand.
Well, yeah, of course, of course.
So, in a lot of ways, it was really just, like, the era at the time. Like, it wasn't very much where people of different places really accommodated each other. Clearly, like, we had to, like, that was just overall the dynamic of the time. And to really be able to integrate and try to survive as, I guess, kind of like a descender of, like, the society was kind of, it was extremely arduous. That was sort of the experience that I got while reading this. And you can kind of see, like, you kind of have to just admire the fact that they went through it all and decided to eventually...
And how successful they all became.
Yeah, because to be honest, all of that prejudice, all of that hate can really get to someone. And it is very, like, misaligned in terms of, like, your ability to succeed versus, like, the usual, like, majority itself. So I definitely would say that I wasn't as surprised, though, of their success because of the fact that, like, I feel like most first generation, at least in that sort of dynamic, even in the US, we have that certain history with Asians as well, Asian Americans as well, is that there's this perpetual hunger to, like, want control because there's so little of it. So I feel like in terms of their need to, like, make money in any way possible, it eventually was successful, but there were certain consequences that came with it as well. So, like, in the US, I do remember going to, like, certain Asian, particularly Chinese American museums and noting that even in 1910s, like 1920s, there were quite a few successful restaurateurs, you know, in China and in San Francisco during a time where, like, Chinese Exclusion Act was a real thing.
Right.
And there were still so many celebrities of, like, the silver screen that went to their restaurants and ate. And that was kind of, like, the same sort of angle that was kind of, well, obviously this happened a little bit, like, a few 40 years later, but it was kind of the same dynamic in terms of, like, the fact of, like, how society kind of came to embrace their business, but not necessarily embrace them. I feel like that is still a question that is being kind of going unanswered in the book because of the fact that it's unanswered in real life. Right. Yeah, it's like this idea of, like, how more can you really assimilate or give back to society that originally once, like, wanted to oust you. So I definitely say that, like, and it's interesting that their business is a pachinko game because I feel like a lot of times when people are marginalized, they tend to pick up the work that no one else really wants to do. Right.
So, like, I feel like this book just has so much stuff. I mean, it's like, what, 500 pages?
We talked about this, like, forever. We're still not done.
I feel like we can talk about this, like, for hours and hours because there's just so much stuff to talk about from, like, culture to racism to generational gaps
to relationships
to just, like, the whole mother-daughter or mother-son relationships to, like basically anything, you know, like businesses, everything. Like, it's all encompassed in this one book. So I felt like even this book is very, very, like, very, like, in-depth and, like, has a lot of things, like, different things to talk about. It was a very fast read for me. Like, I personally finished this book in, like, 3 days. I don't know about you, but I was just, like, so caught up into the story. I was like, oh my god. I was, like, thinking to myself, like, half the time, like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next with Sunja, or, like, what's going on with Hansu, or, like, Mosazu, or, like, Noah, like, all the different characters. I was, like, always, like, thinking about it. So I felt like this book, even though it's quite long, you know, it's 500 pages, but I think it went by very fast. I don't know about you.
No, it definitely did. And I think maybe just because my background was a little different from yours, I was really familiar with the format as to how the story was being told. Okay. She definitely took a lot, like I mentioned before, took a lot of inspiration from how Asian literature is usually written. So for me, though, like, it took a little longer just because, like, I guess I got, like, more time to read for it. Okay. But I would say that overall, like, every time I picked up the book, I had no problem, like, sort of getting into the story, not being confused about what characters' motivations were. Like, in general, like, I finished the book feeling enlightened, but also very complex because of just how much territory this author covered. It was like every single feeling you could possibly have about family was there. It was like watching not necessarily Godfather,
but like very fast forward, like, family drama.
Yeah, and I would definitely say it's close. The closest thing that I could find in recent American cinema or storytelling would be, like, and the most famous would probably be, like, The Godfather, but without, like, the idea of, like, the mobsters. And like,
what is the Yakuza?
They
have a little they had a little bit
obviously,
in there.
because Yakuza is a very intricate part of Japanese society.
Yeah.
But for in general though, like they're not like ingrained. They're like the main family.
Yeah.
But in general, like I would feel the biggest equivalent to this in terms of like the overall feels and like the sort of like residual summary I kind of had when I walked out. I was just like, this is really similar to if I were to explain this to someone who wasn't familiar with this, it'd be like it's like Godfather, but like
Asian version
without like the crime, but just as like telling and enrapturing.
Yeah. So anyways, this is our very in-depth review on Pachinko. Clearly, we both really, really enjoyed it though.
Yay! Good for me.
So yeah, I know. Usually I'm like, ugh, her books.
So far they're doing good. So far
the past few ones have been pretty good. Either the books that she picked or for book of the month or just recommended to me personally. But yeah, like we definitely recommend this book. So if you're into like, you know, a book like a very encompassing book with like generational, like that focus on different generations and whatnot in a different culture, definitely recommend this book as well. I think it'll be very good, very interesting for you guys.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for watching us. If you like us and want to continue to support us, please subscribe. If you like the video and our coverage of the book today, Pachinko, please like this video. And if anything else, definitely comment down below.
All right, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.